This game was requested by Patreon supporter Darksoft and the fine website arcade-projects.com. If you would like to request a game, please visit my Patreon page for details. Thank you. In 1985, an arcade game came along that pushed players past the point of no return. This game was notoriously difficult then, and even now, 35 years later, still holds the test of time as one of the most punishing games ever to be released. The game in question is Ghosts and Goblins. What were the real Ghosts and Goblins that inspired the creation of this classic arcade game? What's the connection between this game and a certain comedy troupe? So put on your armor and get ready for battle, because this is the history of Ghosts and Goblins. The year is 1985, and Capcom designer Tokuro Fujiwara wants to create something near and dear to his heart. Mr. Fujiwara was not always a fan of video games. He applied for a job at Konami in 1982 because of the huge salary involved. But this is when he got the initial video game itch. He started out by creating Puyon, a vertical shooter based on the Three Little Pigs. This was a moderate success which led to a number of conversions. The next game he designed was Rock and Rope, the very first wire action game. This was the basis for the upcoming game Bionic Commando. After these two hits, Mr. Fujiwara moved over to a little-known arcade company called Capsule Computers, or Capcom for short. Mr. Fujiwara was always fascinated with demons and spirits growing up. He had heard the tales of Aokigahara, also known as a suicide forest due to the numerous suicides there every year. He was warned never to go in there by his grandparents, as his body may never be found and his soul would forever be trapped. This would leave a huge mark on him throughout his childhood and influence his game design for the rest of his life. He set out to create a game that would give the players the same kind of chill that he had growing up when it came to the real Ghosts and Goblins of his childhood. He had to dial it back just a bit because of the limitations of the hardware and also from his bosses at Capcom. Ghosts and Goblins, or Makai Mura, which literally translates into Demon World Village, the game sees you in the role of Arthur as he sets out to fight the undead and rescue Princess Prin Prin, who has been kidnapped by the evil demon Astaroth. You must safely guide the knight through 6 stages, guarded by Satan's minions in order to reach Hades. Your weapon of choice is a lance, but there are various weapon upgrades hidden in various pots throughout the levels. Be warned though, you can only carry one weapon at a time. You will need all the help you can get as you battle zombies, ogres, demons, cyclops, and dragons. Truly the stuff of nightmares. At the end of each stage is a mini-boss, which must be defeated in order to advance. There's a halfway checkpoint, but don't think Mr. Fujiwara is making it too easy on you. A lot of average players never made it past the first stage. You are allowed 2 hits. After the first hit, your body is rocked, and you lose your armor and end up in your boxers. Kind of a bit strange for a dark demonic video game, wouldn't you say? Not according to Mr. Fujiwara. He wanted something to lighten the mood and make the game a bit more enjoyable for the average player. He was always a fan of Monty Python and thought their slapstick brand of humor would work well. You also have to contend with the time limit, as if it expires you lose a life. Make sure you pick up the cross weapon on level 5 because you need this to defeat the final boss. If you did not pick this up, you're transported back to the beginning of level 5 to replay that level all over again. If you have the proper weapons and defeat Astaroth, you rescue the princess and all is well. Right? Except not. After doing this the first time, you are transported back to the cemetery or level 1 and have to replay the game all over again except at a higher difficulty. In this day and age, people would have grabbed their pitchforks and stormed the beaches of Capcom, but back then, people loved the challenge. Okay, maybe love is a bit too strong of a word. They appreciated the challenge and kept at it. I'm sure this is the first game that started the whole rage quit epidemic. This game is without a doubt one of the hardest, tough as nails video games in existence. Why was the game so hard? According to Mr. Fujiwara, I conducted location testing in arcades. If the player that tried the game tended not to get stuck at a certain point, I'd have to hurry back to the company and redo that portion. I couldn't let them get by that easily. There are tricks you can use to avoid dying, right? Well, once I figured that out, I'd quickly thwart players who attempted to use them. You'll have to forgive me.
You son of a bitch!
During the game, if you duck and shoot the tombstone 15 times, an angel will appear and turn you into a frog. The red gargoyle, whose name is Red Erimer, was named after Capcom programmer Toshio Arima. According to Mr. Fujiwara, he even looks like him, but I just couldn't see it. Mr. Fujiwara not only developed this game, but at the same time developed another Smash arcade hit, and that was Commando. The game was a massive hit and put Capcom on the map. Elite Software managed to snatch up the rights and produce some very good conversions for the home platforms. Let's start the conversions off with the wonderfully overrated Commodore Plus 4 computer. For those of you who don't know, the Plus 4 was a stripped down version of the Commodore 64, but was also incompatible with its software. Who in their right mind thought this would be a good idea for conversion is beyond me. ASCII graphics and horrible sound effects makes this one to check out. At least the game is fast though. The MS-DOS port is up next, and for an early EGA title it looks pretty good. One difference is that the screen doesn't scroll but uses the flick screen method. This doesn't hinder the gameplay though, as it's very well represented. The only downside is the music and sound effects are PC speaker only. The Spectrum port is up next, and my oh my, what in the world is this? I think this is Ghosts and Goblins, but I can't be sure. It looks like somebody ate asparagus and threw it up all over my screen. Everything is a big jumbled mess with no sound effects or music to speak of. The game is fast enough, I suppose, and it does play decently. The Amstrad version looks pretty good with nice colorful sprites and good animation. The speed of the game is right on par and plays really well. There is even nice music while you play, which in my book is always a plus. The good old Commodore 64 version is up next, and this was rated very highly back in the day and it still holds up. Let's take a look at the horrendous box art before going any further, and we just have to ponder, what in the heck were they thinking? At least the game itself is much better. Good, fast gameplay which matches the speed of the arcade, but the best part of this? Without a doubt, the excellent SID music. I can listen to it on a loop all day long. The Game Boy Color port is up next, and it's really well done. Rather than just port the NES version, they decided to redo it from the ground up, and it came out so much better. All of the flickering for the NES is gone, and in its place are nice, smooth animation and graphics. They really put the Game Boy Color sound chip into overdrive because the tunes it's belting out are awesome. The playability is on par with the arcade game. The version most people are familiar with is the NES port.
お姫様が魔界の使者にさらわれたってよ。助けるのは君だ。できるかな？ファミコンソフト魔界村カプコンから。
While not as graphically faithful as the arcade game, it does a reasonable job at replicating it. The only problem is there is a lot of flicker on the screen every so often. The game plays really well, and there's a nice haunting soundtrack. The Atari ST port looks really good even though it has a zoomed in effect. The graphics and animation are really well done. The playability is on par with the arcade game, but there is no music while you play, which is what you need to complete the Ghosts and Goblins package. Probably the best version not running under emulation is the Amiga version. The graphics have been faithfully replicated here, and this even feels like you're playing the arcade game. Elite must have spent a crazy amount of time dissecting the arcade game to get everything this good. Even the little touches, such as when you lose your armor and the way it leaves your body, have been retained. The music is downright fabulous. One of the best conversions on the Amiga. In 1988, after the enormous success of the original, Ghouls and Ghosts, or Dai Makimura, was released in the arcades. Running on the upgraded CPS-1 hardware, this time around, monsters and demons have returned, and a beam of light has struck through Princess Prin, taking her soul. It's up to Arthur to defeat Lucifer and restore her soul. The gameplay is very similar to Ghosts and Goblins, except this time you have the ability to shoot up and down while jumping. By jumping in certain spots, players can cause a treasure chest to erupt from the ground. By firing a weapon at the chest, you may uncover new weapons or gold armor. But be careful, an evil magician may pop out and change Arthur into a duck or an elderly man. Once again, there are 6 levels ranging from a haunted graveyard, a crystal cave, mountains, and finally Lucifer's chamber. Once again, after making it through levels 1 through 5, you have to replay those levels all over again, just like the first game. This game was just as hard as the first one, but at least this time you have the ability to shoot up. This was another massive arcade hit for Capcom, and a number of home conversions were released. Unfortunately, Elite Software was not in charge of these. Software Creations handled most of the home computer ports, but they omitted a number of details and were average at best.
大魔界村メガドライブで登場傑作を超えた超ド級の迫力ホラーアクションゲーム大魔界村
The only notable ports were the Sega Genesis version, which was programmed by Yuji Naka and was very well done. There was also an excellent Super Graphics port, which was released only in Japan and was only one of 5 titles released for that system. Let's not forget Super Ghouls and Ghosts for the Super Nintendo. This is the 3rd game of the series and plays very similar to the others. The graphics and music are excellent, as is the playability. Out of all the 16-bit ports, this one, hands down, is the best. One new aspect of the game is the double jump. While you still cannot control your direction in mid-air, this does affect the gameplay immensely. Unfortunately, you can no longer shoot up or down. Once again, you have to play through the entire game twice to see the full ending. The other one worth mentioning was the X68000 port. This was released by Capcom itself in 1994 and was a pixel-perfect port of the arcade game. In 2006, after various spin-offs and cameos, Ultimate Ghosts and Goblins was released for the PSP. This is the first game to employ 3D graphics while maintaining much of the 2D gameplay. The plot revolves around Arthur battling demons just like the previous games. The first thing you notice is there are 3 difficulty settings: Novice, Standard, and Ultimate. The game has many weapons from past games, including a few new additions. He is also able to store weapons for use on later levels, and there is also an equip system. He is also able to collect different armor for use on later levels. One big change is the ability to collect rings throughout the levels. You need to collect these in order to face the final boss. Sometimes you have to play the levels 2 or 3 times in order to gain all of the rings. This is an absolutely beautiful game to experience, both in terms of audio and graphics. The only problem is, this is also one of the hardest Ghosts and Goblins games ever, even surpassing the original. Practice up, you'll be glad you did. The game has been re-released a number of times throughout the years. No matter which platform you have, Capcom will have you covered. If you are a sadistic type of person who loves a challenge, be sure and give this game a try. If you like my videos, please consider supporting me on Patreon. Also, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. It's the only way it can grow. Thank you.